Hey everyone, hello, good evening. Hi there. You have tuned into our show, The Tour Guide Welcomes You. I'm your host, that girl, Jenna Kirasoa, for May 12th, 2023. Today is a Friday, and we have 3 talking points we're going to go over briefly. So, the first one is for our well balanced weekend, going over nutrition, preventative health, a reoccurring subject matter, but very, very important, never goes out of style. Next, we'll be talking about our business and tech talks discussion. So I'm going to be bringing up the tiny home or tiny house communities that's been going across the nation, picking up popularity. So let's get into that very, very important topic. And then segment 3, Social Causes Fridays. I wanted to talk more about the preventative tactics for the homelessness crisis that's hitting the country in certain areas and slowly slipping into smaller communities. So we're working on ways to address these issues before it becomes a major problem like in the major cities. Let's just recap from last week. So last week, I brought up a discussion of food dyes and allergies in children and people not picking up on some of the symptoms of ADHD or depression in our youth. And one scientist, researcher, and Dr. Rebecca Bevins, she noticed them in her children, or her child, was able to eliminate all the food dyes and to alleviate the severe depression symptoms that he was experiencing. And she did extensive research and discovered that this has been studied and it's been revealed that it is a problem in certain children. So the issue that she brought to attention, though, is how many children are properly diagnosed with these ADHD symptoms, given medication, and then what I've connected the link to is in the future having essentially a disposition to drug use, recreational drug use from the introduction as a child experiencing some type of chemical dependency or some type of need that they're been essentially kind of programmed to need these drugs for whatever reason, and they find it difficult to cope without it, or they become to enjoy it, or what have you, or they've learned how to function, and it kind of disrupts their development. So different reasons, different backgrounds, different stories. Cannot say that this is the exact explanation or reason for every circumstance, but it's something that we need to take a look at and to kind of consider when we are approaching people who are on hard times, who've fallen on hard times, and just kind of extend a little bit more compassion and understanding as to why a person might be in their circumstances. So lots of reasons, but ultimately we need to find the solutions. That was just a quick recap from last week, but let me jump back into our first segment, which is going to be talking about the health and well-being for the average person. So I posted a video earlier on my Facebook from last August. I was talking about Sherry Kalbaum's The Juice Ladies Living Foods Revolution, and she is a huge proponent of juicing. She has written several books. She's all over social media. She is working with, I believe it's called the Juice Guru Institute, and she's one of the instructors or contributors to that. And she's very, very well known. She's worked with George Foreman, been on television, radio programs, and I was very inspired by her book. And she explains what happened to her. She was suffering from different varying ailments that the doctors couldn't figure out how to help her treat. She went to health food options, to the health food stores, talked to them, got into juicing, experienced healing. Then she got into a severe accident, or she was severely attacked by someone, and the doctor told her that she was not going to be able to regain function of her hand. She had put up her hand to defend herself, and some guy was beating her with like a lead pipe or something, and she almost lost one of her fingers, and she was told she wasn't going to be able to recover from that or ever get function in her hand. But she admits that it was in part to prayer, her faith, a lot of physical therapy, the doctor's help, of course, but also she attributed greatly to juicing and the benefits of the live, raw, fresh fruits and vegetables, getting in sync with her body and helping her body to heal. So I thought that was extremely important to bring up for a well-balanced weekend discussion as we enter in the spring and then summer season in this part of the world, this pocket of the world. And it's very important that since people will be going outside, hopefully, and experiencing more outdoor activities, there's going to be a lot of barbecues, a lot of, summer vacation, snacking, people just kind of like letting loose and relaxing, which you should. And you're right, and you need to do that and chill out and enjoy, vacation time. But I also think, having these discussions, it'd be a great time to do some more research and looking into ways to boost your body and to get prepared for the next season, for the cold and flu season. We have several months before we hit fall and winter, but this is a great time to look into, starting, how do I start a garden? How do I get fresh produce? How do I store and stock it up? Because with the sun, it's very vital that we get a lot of vitamin D. We get outside, the fresh air, get away from the office or the schools where we're inside for a good chunk of the day behind screens. So we're going to hopefully people have an opportunity to go outside and enjoy the spring and summer. And with that coming alongside and again, bringing the nutrition, I also brought up Dead Doctors Don't Lie. And the author, he was a former veterinarian. He treated animals. He realized that we used a lot of supplements to prevent illness in the animals because most livestock for farmers, they don't have insurance on their animals. So instead of them getting sick, they just prevent them from getting sick by giving them a lot of supplements. So he became a neuropath and treated humans and introduced the same concept and mindset into people, giving them a lot of supplements. So it's kind of either or. You could just do a lot of vitamins, minerals, and different formulas, or you can do the live foods, fruits and vegetables, juicing, or a combination of the two. I personally, I've shared here a few times. I haven't really been pushing it very aggressively. Been trying to get everything organized before I officially launch. But I am an Herbalife distributor, so I do help in that area with bringing attention to people, helping them with getting vitamins or supplements or protein shakes or hydration support. So I have information if anyone's interested, as well as I guess you would call me or call myself a home or community herbalist to have lots of resources. I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to diagnose or treat or anything, but just to give information and share that with you guys. So for our well-balanced weekends, that's all I want to share today. Just reminding people to look into your options. If you want to take supplements, if you want to take fresh produce, if you want to do fasting, highly encourage fasting. It's good to give your digestive tract a break. When you are constantly digesting food, your intestines are working, your stomach's working, all of that, and it's burning through a lot of cells. And it's important to give your body a break so the body can repair itself and the cells can get regenerated and the cells can repair themselves. And the body is very great for spiritual aspects, meditation and prayer, truly just really getting in sync with your body, getting in tune, and then just pretty much flushing all the toxins out. So if you're interested in that, I posted my website. It's yourpresentreality.com. I do clarity consultations as well as the herbalism consultation. So if there's something that you'd like to discuss, like you have some ideas you want to get off your chest or out of your head, or some ideas you need help putting into action, please contact me. The first session is free. And then also with mental health, that's kind of where I'm kind of specializing. I'm not a doctor, but an area of interest that I take in helping people who want to improve their mental health, their memory, longevity, all of that stuff. So if you're interested, please let me know. I would love to help you and talk with you and just bounce some ideas off. Let's network. So going on to segment 2, though, let's talk about our business and tech talks discussion. So the tiny home or tiny house project. I brought that up briefly last week in our discussion. A woman that I know, she says she's on a waiting list to get into one of these housings opportunities. So I'm very excited for her. I don't know if anyone's watched that show, Trailer Park Boys. Don't ask me why. I love mockumentaries, people who are like spoofing reality TV shows. Like I love Reno 911, The Office, Parks and Recreation, Community, um, Superstore, and I love Trailer Park Boys. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. Maybe because I grew up in the country, probably. But there's a character, Bubbles. He lives in a shed, and he's very content there. And I must say, like, it's pretty neat. Just a very, very simple life. I've had my experience staying in a mobile home, and just very, very simple. And I like simple. You know, a lot of people don't really want a lot out of life. They just want a place that's their own, some shelter, some privacy, and they can keep their things safe. But ultimately, though, a lot of people are kind of like at a breaking point in our community with the cost of living, the groceries, rent, utilities. Everything is going up. Everyone keeps talking about the debt ceiling. I don't want to get into any conspiracies right now about the financial system. But let's just focus on the fact that people are struggling right now. And not everyone's in a great position to say, oh yeah, I'm going to put some money in savings and I'm going to buy a house and I'm going to apply for a loan, you know, and everything's going to be groovy and everything's going to be Gucci, because obviously it's not. We're seeing it, and like I live in California. People, when they think of California, they think of San Francisco and Los Angeles automatically, and they just assume the entire state is just riddled with people who are shooting up and defecating on streets, and they're living in tent cities. That's a problem in certain areas, but it's not across the entire Golden State of California. The thing is, though, we need to address these issues before the entire state becomes that way, and it doesn't have to be. And some of it has to be a change in perspective, and pretty much, again, I've shared last week. There's already a lot of programs that are taking place. There's already a lot of people who are taking actions and bringing attention to these things. There's only so much talking you can do. Next, we need to actually take action, and there's a lot of action being taken. So let's just continue the momentum, continue the conversations, and I like to bring up again the soup kitchen, people who provide food. Salvation Army provides meals. The different churches help. There are programs out there, and I just want to when I think about it, I get kind of emotional because I'm just really happy to see things coming together. Truly, I am. And so, as far as the business and tech talks, let's be realistic. Not every person's going to be able to live the quote-unquote American dream with like the white picket fence and the green lawn and the 2.5 children or what have you. The nuclear family, that's not in everyone's equation. And it's perfectly fine, and that's why this country is great and it is beautiful, because you have your constitutional right to live your life the way you want to. That's at least what it is in theory. It says you have the right to pursue the pursuit of happiness. And again, I like to specify this. No one is guaranteeing you happiness. You're not promised to be happy, but you're supposed to be given the opportunity to pursue it, however that looks like in your understanding. That's why my website is called Your Present Reality. It's pretty much what you want to present to yourself in society. You have your identity, you're secure in your identity, you are sure with what you want, your desire, your passions, your interests, your talents, your hobbies, the things that make life worth living. Once you have that established, please present that to us. Life is a present. We need you to be present. I need you to be here right now. I need you to focus and think and tell us, tell the world, tell the universe, tell God, whomever, what it is that you would like to share or contribute. And it's very important, though, that we do this with love and respect, with a safe, solid, firm foundation. We're not trying to bring harm, hurt, or danger to any other person. We are following on strict constitutional guidelines, our God-given right to pursue our happiness. But we also need to protect those who aren't able to protect themselves, those who are vulnerable, And again, with love and compassion, it's very important that we're patient and understanding. And I had lost sight of that for a while. I had gone into overcorrective mode, trying to prevent the worst case scenario and all these bad things, or um, repeating things that happened in the past. So I overcorrected and lost sight of the vision. So this project has been in the works for about 10 years. It's still going, it's still moving. So if you have an opportunity, I'd really appreciate you guys checking out my website, yourpresentreality.com. The link is on my Facebook page, or you can, check it out on your browser whenever you have time. And definitely just take a look at some of the ideas, the 8 principles or 8 core principles or pillars of what the group's trying to achieve. So that's all I want to share for now for the business and tech talks. But let's really look into these tiny home options, what we can do for people. And again, a lot of times people think, well, they didn't deserve it, they didn't work for it, this, that, and the other. We don't know every person's story. There are some people out there who probably has just learned how to use the system to their advantage. They don't have to work, and there's other people who have worked the system very hard. I spoke with one woman actually when I was staying at the shelter briefly. One woman, she experienced an injury at work. One of the pipes had exploded and it hit her in the back of the head, and she was in a coma for a few days, and she had lost hearing in one ear. So it was a person who was working perfectly fine and then had an injury at work and then fell on hard times. Things like that happen. People experience traumas through war, postpartum, abusive relationships, you name it. You never know. Someone who used to work 3 jobs, had their own house, children, everything great. One tragedy, one accident could have changed their entire course of life. And you don't know the details of that. You're just going to assume, like, oh, they didn't work for it. It's like, how do you know? So we need to just look to the future and continue pressing forward, continue on smartly. So that's all I got to share for our business and tech talks. But let's going back to our social causes Friday. So last week I mentioned briefly the children's garden and museum. And right now I'm working on a new promotional writing piece on it. I'm kind of brainstorming how I want to put everything together. So just to let you know, it's a garden that is designed for children. There's little tiny houses for the children to like make believe, and they're really nicely built structures. Very, very beautiful little small homes. They're just like, make believe pretend houses. And the children love playing in there and making like little kitchens. Like they've got little kitchens in there and like little pots and pans and sets, and the children pretend they're cooking. And then they've got books all over the place, so you can sit in the rooms with the children and read little stories, bring a picnic lunch. There's a big house, or a main house, a normal house. It was built, I believe, sometime in the 1800s. So that's kind of like the museum aspect of this location. And it's really neat because there's a playroom in there, there's a couple of pianos, there's a dining room table, and more books, of course, and just some antique furniture and antique props that the kids like to explore and look at. And it's a really, really peaceful environment. There's a garden there, there's a greenhouse, they've got produce, people have weddings and baby showers there. They're expanding some of the features. One of the ideas down the road is to have like an actual tree house there. I don't know if anyone's been to Bravo Farms in Traver, California, Central California. Off the 99, they have a 7-story tree house there. Really cool. So if anyone's traveling through California, look up Bravo Farms, Traver, check out their treehouse. So they're hoping to have a treehouse built one day in the future. But for the most part, though, I was talking to a woman, and she was talking about they had granted money for the homelessness crisis. And she said some of the money went to this children's museum. And she just didn't understand why all of it didn't go to the homelessness issue. And I kind of was thinking and marinating on the thought, and I realized that this homelessness crisis is very important. We also need to talk about prevention, and part of the prevention is to help the children learn about self-sufficiency, give them an opportunity to be with nature, to learn how to grow food, a safe environment. This is a great place for parents and children having, unification meetings. It's a great, safe environment for children to be kids and to play and to grow up in a healthier, helping environment. But I also had a recent epiphany that essentially the setup of this place, I was thinking about how they have the main house that was built in the 1800s, and then surrounding the property, they have the tiny homes that are just props for the kids to play in. Sandbox, picnic tables, garden, greenhouse, and about 4 or 5 little small homes. I'm thinking like this is essentially the prototype of what a tiny home or a tiny house community could look like, or commune, where you would have a main house for events, a dining hall possibly. You would have the garden, you'd have the produce trees, and you could have like literal tiny homes surrounding it. And I remembered as a child, watching either like Dateline or one of those shows, those evening shows, and there was a community there. It was a gated community. People worked conventional jobs, but every evening, everyone would come together and they would share a meal together. And it was kind of comical. My parents thought it was kind of like, silly. No, that's ridiculous. Because I remember going to church at the base chapel and we would have like monthly potlucks, or they would have the single sailor outreach dinners where they would cook food and invite single sailors to have, food over. Instead of being able to go to their family's house to eat, they could go to the church and get a home cooked meal. And I always loved the idea of sharing a meal together, especially dinner time. So this community essentially, again, people work conventional jobs. They would go to the dining hall of those gated communities and everyone would just eat a meal together like every single night. And to me that always stuck because I saw this probably when I was like elementary school or junior high, and I've always loved that concept. And even now in more recent times, I know there's a lot of working moms, and I was networking with another girlfriend of mine. She's a working mom, and sometimes she would come over to my house and like I would have a meal cooked for her and she would bring over a side dish and her daughter would play with my children and we would just, have fellowship and we would share food. And I'm thinking like, why is that such a far-fetched concept? Like, why is everyone so individualized and everyone's kind of in their own little islands and their own little boxes, shut off from the world, especially during the pandemic? That happened a lot. And I'm thinking like, not everyone, wants to be isolated. I don't know if there's other people out there who think like me, where it's like, I'd like to share a meal with you. Like, it's kind of weird asking random people, hey, you want to come over and eat? So, back to the social causes subject though. With the tiny homes, the Children's Garden and Museum, I think, is a prototype, essentially. You say, I love being alone. I have moments where I love being alone, but personally, I'm a person who thrives in the company of others. I can easily eat food alone and cook a meal for myself, but part of cooking or doing anything, I think it's part of the experience is sharing the end result. I'm more into drink making and I don't know, one of those things, personality type, whatever you want to call it. It's just, I like to share what I create with people, and food is something that's always been something close to my heart. I think it's also, I don't like the idea of people being hungry or someone being alone if they don't want to be alone, if they don't have to be alone, or again, with the single moms working, that pressure on their shoulders, like I have to make sure my kids are fed and I have to be the one to cook it, and kind of taking some pressure off of them and alleviating some of the stress. Yeah, absolutely. My mom, I remember her and one of my good friends, she was always saying like, oh, I got to cook for my man, I got to cook for my husband. And I always admired that. And I never thought that it was beneath a woman or like it was like a slave thing. It was like, I really value the woman, the person who wanted to make sure the other person was cared for and taken care of. Not with any expectation, but just knowing that, hey, someone else isn't suffering right now, especially, those who are in a homelessness situation or those battling with addiction or, again, mothers, because definitely know how a mental breakdown feels like. So with that, that's pretty much all I wanted to share with you guys is that, again, it's the preventative health tactics, the importance of getting the proper nutrition through either fresh produce, through juicing, or any type of supplements. I personally, again, I have to say, I'm not a doctor. I'm just giving you words of wisdom. Sorry, this is lost in thing. Yeah, lost in society. I think people just really haven't really considered it. We're so used to the expectations of work and what other people are expecting from you that they don't like to share the burdens, or they don't feel that they can share their burdens with other people, that it's not any other person's responsibility. They've been kind of like conditioned to like, you just deal with it, it's your problem. So yeah, it is kind of a lost thing, and that's why I love hearing about the Native American cultures, the African cultures. I had one friend, she's Caucasian. She told me, she's like, it's the white people that isolate. We need to learn from the Hispanic people and the blacks. Just like, at least she's honest. But it's something that it's lost and it needs to be rekindled. But like I said, again, I'm not a doctor, but I personally do take mushroom powders, the lion's mane, and the ashwagandha root, and it's helped me tremendously. So I wanted to share that with you guys. So, and then do some more research into the tiny home projects, see what's going on in your community, how you can help or contribute. And then, yeah, just kind of look at different concepts and get people, kind of talking about it and networking. Yes, man, I don't share anything. When I was married, I really valued and appreciated the fact that my spouse at the time he was content to just say, it's my job, it's my role, it's my responsibility to take care of the family, to do my job. Like, his grandfather was military. He had that same mentality where it's just like, you just do your job. And I really, really valued that, that thought process. But I also saw the downside where it was, like, for example, since you brought it up, I have to, okay? So, I keep this book right here. It's called Homemaking. This book was first published in 1882. You probably can't see it, but 1882. So I've been reading this book slowly because I'm a hopeless romantic and I'm a sucker for it. But it talks about the husband's part. Again, this is coming from the 1800s. I got this book from the thrift store. It is one of my prized possessions. And the book, this wisdom from this pastor, Presbyterian pastor, shares that the husband really needs to share all of his feelings with his spouse. He needs to talk with her about everything. And it's really beautiful. Again, a hopeless romantic. I'm like, oh my gosh, how romantic. Like, that's so sweet. But it's really the reason for marriage. You're supposed to be able to be vulnerable and let your guard down and to cherish your spouse, to have your thoughts, your ideas, your strengths, your weaknesses, everything confided into her. And then it also talks about the wedded life, having like a special room where it's just for you and your spouse. No one else is allowed to enter it. Whatever's spoken there, you're not supposed to like let out, just completely just transparent, where you are short, she fills in, and vice versa. And like, it's beautiful. Like, I guess I have an old soul. It is a hard concept. I definitely understand. But again, this book was written in the 1800s, and maybe I should do some more posts on this, because I take pictures of it and say I'm going to post some things, but maybe I should do more of it, because this is old school. This is like 1800s, and yeah, maybe it's a lost thing where men aren't allowed to be vulnerable, but it's encouraged. This pastor encouraged that the husband divulge everything to his spouse, and then the spouse, of course, is to, lovingly receive it and be the nurturer, the comforter, creating a safe haven for the household. So, lots of things. Maybe I should do a series on that book, Homemaking. But yeah, you got me wondering. But I appreciate any person who spent any time listening to this. I don't know. Most women can handle what we have to carry if we take the responsibility of being the provider. It's too much to share. I don't know about that. I don't know. We'll see. Take the responsibility of being the provider. It's too much to share. I don't know. Well, as long as you're comfortable, your dynamic, you know what you can handle, what you should or should not share. You can discern that. It's wise. I think, personally, from my experience, yes, have a wonderful night as well. But from my experience, I feel that it's very beneficial that the spouses talk more, but that's for a different day. Maybe I'll spend a little bit more time talking about that. But anyways, I've been your host, the tour guide. At any point in time you're consuming this content, I can only hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for any person who's tuned in at any point in this discussion. Appreciate your time. It's very, very valuable. And as always, God's peace.